Hello, hello, it's O. And have you ever wondered what kind of policy that character would have? Today we're talking about Superman. And with the new Superman movie coming out, it seems like the perfect time to see what the man in the red cape would actually do. Now, a disclaimer for all my nerds, geeks, or whatever out there. I love comics. They're great, but I am not an expert. So don't come at me. Don't come at me. Now, with that being said, number one, Superman. What kind of policy would Superman have? Now, we have to understand what the Man in Blue basically does already. He is an alien from outer space, super strong, nigh impenetrable, basically immortal at this point with the way, depending on who's writing him. And then on top of that, he is constantly saving other individuals. Superman, for lack of better words, is the invulnerable person you need by your side when something evil is happening, whether it be a murder on the street or an intergalactic battle, right? So what kind of policy would he actually get? Frankly speaking, if we're looking at continuity, Superman probably wouldn't even have a life insurance policy. And the reason I say that is because obviously with what he does and with what he knows, he can accumulate a massive wealth to where he wouldn't necessarily need one. However, because of characters that he cares about and because of the Boy Scout nature that he has, including the training from his parents, I would say that more than likely Superman would have what I would say is a pretty aggressive whole life policy. Pretty aggressive whole life policy. And the reason why is because one, he lives for a very long time. Two, the statutes of the investment that the whole life basically would bring for his loved ones. And then three, and probably the most important, is the fact that he would outlive, realistically, the endowment period, which we talk about in another video, but the endowment period for the whole life. Endowment basically meaning that once you hit a certain age, you are no longer expected to pay anymore, okay? I would say that Superman is more than likely going to have a policy of probably closer to $10 million of a whole life policy. He'd probably get a very aggressive term life policy if he were to be going into an intergalactic battle. Accidental policy, I don't think that any insurance company would naturally cover him because he is purposely running into fires. But if it was Superman, I would say a very aggressive whole life policy with a very aggressive term life policy, definitely in the millions already. But would he ever really get to use it? Probably not. Next on the list, let's go for Green Lantern, okay? And in the movie, funny enough, we're going with Guy Gardner. Now, if you don't know about Guy Gardner, there are so many different characteristics when it comes to the different Green Lanterns. You got Hal, you got John Stewart, the list goes on and on. Guy Gardner is basically that jock that got a ring, but turns out to be a good guy at heart. He just doesn't know how to talk like a good guy. So he's basically a jerk with a green ring on it. And considering that when it comes to the Green Lantern Corps, you are an intergalactic police, you already know that he is going to have probably the most aggressive accidental policy ever. Now, would an insurance company cover them? Probably not. Probably not. But he is going to have the most aggressive accidental policy out there because that's normally what individuals who are in the service industry, such as our firefighters, our policemen, our military, have on themselves. Because you never know what's going to happen on the job. And we're talking about outside of the planet. Now, yeah, he's coming to the planet to help, but outside of the planet, he's basically saving people and running into things. That's an aggressive accidental policy. I would say, considering his nature, he is more than likely going to have a very aggressive term policy. He's not going to believe in whole life. He's like, why on earth would I have money saved up for this, that, and the third, or whatever the case may be? I don't know what tomorrow will bring. So he's going to have a term policy that would basically be something he can basically wear on his chest as like, look at me being responsible because he learned how to die properly, but also so that he knows that, you know, any of his loved ones are taken care in the right way. I'd see him basically getting like 100 mil when it comes to a term policy, but having probably the most aggressive accidental policy you could possibly think of. Again, would an insurance company cover them? I don't know, but at the end of the day, we are talking about fictional characters. So let's get to number three. Number three, Lois Lane. She's normal, thank goodness. What kind of policy would Lois Lane have? Now, considering where she lives and the things that happen in there, I would already say that any policy she's getting, they're probably going to treat it, if you know, like how California insurance companies do it. It's going to be super expensive. But I can see her getting a blend of whole life, term life, and of course, accidental. even though her boyfriend is basically Superman. If you didn't know that, spoilers. But when it comes to Lois, she is a normal human being. Okay? As a normal human being who is basically faced with intergalactic trouble because of who she basically rushes after, especially considering she is a reporter who constantly is running into danger, she is going to have a pretty solid accidental policy. She's going to have a pretty high term policy, and then of course a whole life policy because she pays attention to the channel to make sure that she's able to be buried properly. So I could see her whole life probably being somewhere around 50K, her term life probably being more so in the hundreds of thousands, and then her accidental also being in the hundreds of thousands as well, just to make sure that she's situated. Now, who it would go to, Superman wouldn't really have use for the money, but of course, when it comes to her family and her loved ones, more than likely that's where it would be going to. Let's go into number 4. And number 4, I would say we look at Mr. Terrific. For those who don't know, Mr. Terrific is probably one of the few black superheroes that doesn't have lightning powers, okay? He is probably considered in the top 3 of most intelligent individuals when it comes to the DC universe. I don't want to go too deep into him because, of course, some people, this may be the first time they're watching the movie and I don't want to ruin the character for you, but definitely a character that uses his smarts to get the upper hand on other individuals. So when you have someone that intelligent, you know what they're going to do? They are going to have a life paid up policy, okay? A life paid up policy because he already has the means to make money for himself. So with that life paid up policy, he's going to make it as high as he possibly can to get the most out of it that he possibly can when it comes to investments. He would probably go for a life paid up at 65. Okay. It would probably be for, I would say 3.5 million just because of percentages when it comes to the life paid up. He would get a term life just in case, because I'm sure there will be a level of emotional baggage with that because he could basically die with the task that he does. He would also get an accidental policy as well. So I would see him with a life paid up policy at 65, probably 3.5 million, a pretty aggressive term policy that's probably going to be in the millions as well, just in case if something would happen. And then of course, an egregious accidental policy with just the different things that he deals with on a daily basis and probably some of the inventions that he makes, because just because he's smart doesn't mean an explosion can't happen in his face, right? Next, speaking of people who are non-human, we might as well talk about the white elephant in the room, or the white dog in the room, Krypto the Superdog, okay? Now, guys, pet insurance is a thing, but I don't think people truly understand how pet insurance works, especially in the life insurance case. As I said before, life insurance is for human beings. So the person who would actually have the policy on themselves would actually be Superman or potentially Lois, depending on, you know, how close they are in the writing of the story, for the dog. Okay, because I'll use myself as an example. Me and my wife had a cat. Yep, I ended up being a cat dad because of my wife. Who knew? But if anything were to happen to the cat, technically no policy could really be on them. Things are changing, so that may change in the future. But what would really happen is when it comes to pet insurance, it's more so insurance to protect or take care of the pet when the owner is no longer there. Now, I don't know who in their right mind would be able to take care of a super dog that basically, if you look at his stats, can basically fly at the speed of light. However, at the end of the day, if something were to happen to Superman, that egregious policy that he has is going to play into the pet insurance for Krypto, because Krypto technically couldn't have a policy. Now, next, Jimmy Olsen. Yeah, Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy, again, is a normal human being. And from what I know about Jimmy, he's basically the photographer that got lucky that he became friends with Superman. And here and there, he has moments where he basically has kissed different super women or super villains when it comes to that, but he's a normal human being, normally single most of the time. And this brings into question, what would a single guy in a universe like the Superman mythos basically have for themselves? Well, more than likely, especially when it comes to single men, they have a mom or a dad that they basically are caring for. Now, for those who know the comics, if his parents are dead, don't come at me. Okay? Don't come at me. But they normally have some individual that they care for. It could be Lois Lane in this case. I don't see him having a very, very high policy. I see him having probably a basic policy just because he cares enough to not only get buried, but also to somewhat help himself with hospital indemnities. That is also in another video that we have basically gone over. When it comes to him He would probably have enough to bury himself with a whole life policy. He would get an accidental policy just because of the type of work he does. Don't really see him getting a term policy because, again, you can get more for term, but he probably just wants to make sure, because he's a fan of the channel, he just wants to make sure that he's getting buried. But then on top of that, it's not going to be a really big policy, like probably 30 to 40,000 just because of age, having an accidental policy just because of where he lives, and then that would basically be it for Jimmy Olsen. If he got more, probably if he got a girlfriend or something like that, we could see that going up. But for him, it would just be like the standard, I'm single, this is what I'm dealing with kind of policy. Next, let's end off with Lex Luthor. Yeah, let's end off with Lex Luthor. Lex wouldn't have a policy, y'all. Lex doesn't think he's gonna die. Like, Lex does everything he can to basically, he's obsessed with beating Superman. Now, there are different writings where Lex has basically dealt with the aspect of death coming his way. If you know, you know. But at the end of the day, Lex is never really going to think of himself in helping another individual, depending on how he's written. He's going to think of how he can basically get the most out of insurance, period. So you know what Lex is going to do? Lex is going to use insurable interest when it comes to all of his employees. Yep. Lex is going to use his money, and he is going to get a policy on every employee that he could possibly think of in every single space of business that he has, so that if anything were to happen to them, he is the beneficiary. That is what Lex Luthor would do. It just is. And for those of you who are thinking, oh shoot, I should do the same thing, shame on you. But that is what Lex Luthor would do. He wants to get the most out of the policy for himself. Because why on earth would he leave any money left over for anybody? That doesn't sound like a Lex Luthor type of thing. So he's going to get policies on everyone. Maybe he's going to make it into a form of a group insurance, but he's going to make sure he gets the most out of it, because if any of his workers die, it's like, oh no, that's so bad. He goes to the funeral, everything like that, but he's also pocketing a check for however much he's basically put on them. Considering that Lex is a very wealthy man, I can foresee him basically getting like probably 100,000 on each of his people. Definitely all going to be term. Definitely all going to be term. He has not put his whole life on anybody. In fact, if anything, he'll probably try and shoot for them to die in the situation that they're dealing with. But guys, that would be the list in the Superman mythos so far when it comes to the aspect of what kind of insurance would that character have. And of course, as fun as this video was, this is a channel where we are focused on the aspects of you getting what you need to protect yourself and your family. And if you want to learn how to die properly from a licensed individual, like, share, and subscribe. And of course, we will see you in the next video. Take care.
You pay for this. Knowing you, it's insured.